Okay, we are recording. So welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast, Alan Bateson.
How you
No,
doing?
Alan Batemanson. Sorry, mate. I've got your name wrong already.
No, it's Bateson. You were right first time.
Is it Bate? Is it
Bateson,
Bate?
B-A-T.
It is. Yeah, I was right. Yeah, sorry. What do you go by? I know. Obviously, you're social media. You're the running monk. But what
Yeah.
do people what do your mates call you?
Alan. Yeah, Alan or Al.
Alan or Al?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll stick to Alan then, if that's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
So what I normally do is just kind of get to know the person a bit. So if people aren't aware of who you are or what you do, so could you sort of give sort of your background, how you got into running? You've got a really interesting backstory, so I want you to go into as much detail as you're willing to share of how you became the running monk, basically.
Okay. Well, running has been part of my life since I was a child. I was a decent runner as a child, at school level, at local level, local cross country, etc., etc. But I've also had a flip side to my life as well, where I've had a long love affair with drugs and alcohol, and those two don't really mix. So throughout periods of my 20s especially, there would be long periods where I'd be more heavily involved with the drink and drugs than I was with the running. But I've always been able to drop off, have a bit of period of sobriety. I could go out and run 8 or 10 miles at any point in my life. I'm just lucky, I guess, that I've got that ability, both mentally and physically. I can drop into that. But I don't know. I, it was mainly at school, it was track running, athletics, etc. And then I was always a keen footballer as well. So when I left school, I was banging to football, and running would be something I did a couple of times in the week just to keep me fit. I'd never considered running long distances. An hour was a long time to run. And then I got into some trouble with drugs when I was about 19 and got arrested, and I ended up in a young offenders institute. Got a couple of years sentence, which I only ended up serving a year of, for good behaviour and blah blah blah. But while I was in there, I got a job working in the gym, which was great for me because I learned about weight training, I learned about strength, about conditioning, etc. But there was a treadmill in there, and I used to just go in there and mess around on the treadmill. And one of the gym officers came over one day and was talking to me, and I guess he just saw that I had a decent running ability. And the older I get, and the more I look back on that, it was an amazing thing for him to do. Basically, they started taking me out in their lunch hour. They got permission from the governor to take me out of the prison and go running around Cheshire, or Warrington it was Thorncross. It was an open prison anyway. So we had some freedom. We were just locked up at night. But what an amazing thing for them to do. And then I started to learn about pacing. And being out and being free was just amazing at that age. And I kind of fell in love with running again then. And I came out. I was 21 when I came out of prison. And I continued to run for a while and was playing football and was probably as fit as I'd been at any point. I'd gone into prison 9 stone, skinny little rat, hammering speed. I'd start taking drugs on a Thursday, and then I'd just party till Sunday, wouldn't eat. Then I'd eat a bit of food for a few days, and then I'd be back taking speed and ecstasy and up all night. So I came out of prison 11 stone. I'd put some weight on, I was healthy. I packed in smoking. And then I started playing football, like I say, and I started just going out with a different crowd. But rather than going out to clubs and taking drugs, I was just playing football and going back to the pub, which is socially acceptable, right? That's fine. You go back, you have 6 or 8 pints, then you go out to a club at night, maybe chasing girls, just being okay, because it's an acceptable drug. Well, that kind of crept up on me, and by the age of 26, I was in serious trouble with it. I was drinking more than everyone else. I sometimes just had to drink in the week because I'd have a bad night. I sometimes missed football training in the week because I'd gone to the pub after work and I couldn't drive. So I sought help, which was the first time in my life really that I'd accepted vulnerability, accepted perceived weakness, which is a massive problem for men, especially young men, isn't it? And what happened was I saw this guy that turned out to be one of the most important relationships in my life. So I went to talk to this guy. It was called an alcohol services, but at the first 45-minute session, I don't think we spoke more than 6 sentences. I thought I'd go in there and this guy would just cure me. Counselling doesn't work that way. It needs to come from me, from the person that is there. So I went in. First session was a write-off. I continued to go back week on week, and gradually I opened up. He picked and prodded, and we went back over my life. I opened up for the first time in my life that I'd been sexually abused as a 10-year-old boy. The impact that I'd had on my mental health, on my self-esteem, self-perception, etc. The anger that I carried. I guess some of the reasons I drank to excess, taken drugs to excess, got in a lot of fights. You know, it was all trying to still what was going on in my mind. It doesn't work, to be honest. You can do what you want to try and still your mind, but unless you deal with what's in there, it's going to keep rising to the top. So these temporary measures that myself and many other people that have had some kind of trauma in their childhood or early years, it doesn't have to be sexual abuse. I mean, there's so many different kinds of abuse and trauma that affect young people. But if it's not dealt with, it is going to come out and it is going to impact on your adult life. So anyway, over 2 years I spent going to this guy. It really helped. It didn't cure me, but it really helped. One, it taught me how to communicate and open up. Two, it made me realize that what had happened was not my fault, that I hadn't asked for it, or just all the shit that you as a young person are made to feel. You shoulder the blame, etc. But while this was happening, I was now smoking quite a lot of weed because I thought, right, well, I'm not drinking. I was still playing football. I was running. I lost about 1.5 stone in weight in about 6 months because we all know what alcohol does. It makes you bloat, etc. So I was fit, and I was 26, so you know I could smoke weed. I was still smoking cigarettes again at this time, but young people can get away with that, can't they? So my fitness was pretty good, and then I started using cocaine as well, and that crept up. And then I stopped seeing the counsellor at the age of 28. And I can remember what happened. We played a cup final. I scored the winning goal. I'd gone back to the pub after, and I was sober and was cool with being sober. But I just thought, oh, I'm cured now. I've done this kind of thing. I'll just have some Guinness, and it's fine, and I won't have any shots. And I can remember having 6-7 pints of Guinness. The trophy was being handed round to kind of whatever random booze the younger kids had put in at the young lads that were playing for the team. So I had a few swigs of that, but generally it was just Guinness. And I woke up on the next morning feeling like death. But sure enough, within 3, 4, 5 weeks, I was back to drinking heavily. So now I had a weed problem, a cocaine problem, and an alcohol problem. It was tough. And then as this was happening, my girlfriend at the time, who eventually became my wife, I'm now divorced. But I had my first child, and I'm not going to go too far into that. That was a phase of life that, you know, it's not my place to talk about. That relationship is gone. I have 3 children. I'm divorced. But the early years of me being a dad, I wasn't up to the job. I hold my hands up. My children now are 11, 13, and 15, and we talk openly. And I hold my hands up. I made a mess of those years. Sometimes I'd be sober, sometimes I wouldn't. It was sporadic. But when I was drinking, I was out of control, and it was escalating quickly. At this point, I wasn't even drinking at home much. I'd be going out for longer than I should, or I'd sometimes take my older son to the shop via 3 or 4 pubs, you know, just selfish, horrendous behaviour. Anyway, when my ex-wife was pregnant with a second one, I decided to sort myself out, got sober for about a year, and was running, was doing weights, was fit. Where we were living at the time, I'm also a hairdresser, so I was doing this lady's hair, whose husband happened to be the British fell champion. national British Fell champion, a really good runner. Took me under his wing a little bit, was coaching me, mentoring me, teaching me loads of different things. I started entering local fell races and was getting okay at that sort of running. I was doing well. Then, as happens with addiction worldwide, I fell off the wagon again. And without going over it in too much detail, my 30s, from that point, from 31 to 38, when I finally got sober, it was on, off, but the ons got bigger. In my early 30s, I then started drinking at home. It would start with, I'd buy 4 cans of beer on the way home on a Monday night, and do that every night. And then that wasn't enough. So I'd be buying maybe 4 cans and maybe a bottle of cider or a bottle of wine, and then it became 2 bottles of wine and a couple of beers. All this time I'm still smoking weed. Cocaine was in and out. By my mid-30s, it was all out of control. I started going to some AA meetings, but I don't respond well to that group thing. I've never been part of a running club. I don't like the group thing. So I went for a while, I learned from it. I definitely took some lessons from that. And that mentality, the AA mentality, I think there's definitely some benefits to it. Taking responsibility for your past, trying to make amends for some of the balls ups you've made. I mean, I think that can be taken into anyone's life, not just addicts. We all make messes of relationships, we all make messes of life, etc. But I just knew that there was something else I should be doing in my life. I knew my children deserved more. And there were several things that happened in that last year. One was I went to like a family wedding and got really drunk and made a complete dick out of myself and offended a few people. The other one was my mum said to me that my oldest son had said, Dad was shouting at the telly on Sunday watching football. I'm not a loud person. It's out of character for me, and he'd noticed that it was out of character. I mean, I'm a Spurs fan, so if I shouted every time anything was happening, you know what I mean? They're bloody useless. They're always breaking my heart. But he noticed it. And then, yeah, the other thing was just, I spent a lot of time in pubs, obviously, and whatever pub I went into, anywhere in the country, the world, whatever, there's nearly always a guy in there. If you say you run or you play football, there's nearly always a guy in there. Oh, I used to be on the books at Aston Villa. Oh, I used to be a really good runner. Oh, I used to win the cross country at school. Out of shape, drinking, smoking, always got the story about what he used to be and what he could have been. And I just thought, that's what you're going to end up as. And that filled me with dread, to just be that bloke boring people with what I used to be. So I got sober. I just knew on Sunday night, I was drinking a bottle of wine, and I just said to the woman I was married to at the time, this is it. I'm not doing it anymore. And that was Sunday, the 19th of November, 2017. And I woke up on what I call my sober birthday, Monday, 20th of November, 2017. And I haven't touched a drop since. I haven't touched a drug since. Luckily for me, I had a head start that year, because out of those previous 11 months of 2017, I'd probably drank about 5 months, and I'd been sober about 7. And I was working quite hard. I mean, I was still smoking then, so my lung capacity wasn't great. So I was doing a lot in the gym, so I was strong and running. I'd run 17 miles that year, and it was my longest ever run. And I thought it was, it nearly killed me, because again, I'd done local races, fell races. You don't carry water, you don't carry food. So I did 17 miles, and I bonked at about 15 mile. And I was running with that guy, Tim Davis, fell champion, and he was just taking the piss out of me. He was hiding behind trees and jumping out at me and making me laugh for the last few miles. Zero sympathy. Just like when you're out. But what I discovered was, so I got sober. All of a sudden, it's like someone was creeping into my house at night and sticking 20 quid in my wallet. So I've got this extra money and extra time, because being an addict is time consuming. And then I separated from my ex-wife. So we get on, it's fine. We've got the kids 50-50, but that obviously gave me extra time. So I've got the 50% of the time I've got no kids and I'm not drinking. So after work, I'm twitchy. I can't sit and watch telly. I still can't sit and watch telly. I'm not very good with time on my hands. So I go out for 45 minutes, an hour to run. But it became 2 hours, it became 3 hours, and it just, like everything in my life, it escalated. And I've had a few people say to me, "Why haven't you just transferred one addiction for another?" And I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, maybe I have, but you know what? I always wanted one more line of cocaine or one more alcoholic drink, and it would have eventually killed me. I think if you know what you're doing and you look after your body and you get your nutrition right, you can pretty much go one more mile. And I'm proving that by the way I live my life now. So I was training hard, I was getting fit. I entered my first 50k, did my first 50 miler. All these things I was enjoying, but it wasn't fulfilled. Entered my first 100 miler, and then I got plantar fasciitis. So I had to defer that first 100 miler. That would have been 2019. And then, of course, by the time 2020 came, I couldn't do it because COVID stopped. Being the age I am, I've lost quite a few friends to suicide. So many men. I mean, it's the biggest killer of men under 40, right? And having been in a prison cell with, a ripped up sheet around my own neck, luckily someone helped pull me back from killing myself. But I've taken an overdose and woke up. I was devastated that I woke up, but I'm glad I did, obviously. So I decided, this charity kept popping up, CALM, Campaign Against Living Miserably, Male Suicide Prevention. So this fitness I'd attained through training for a 100 miler, couldn't do it. Also couldn't go to work with my hairdressing. So I decided to run the Offa's Dyke, because I train a lot on the Offa's Dyke, living where I live in sort of Shropshire, Mid Wales border. So I decided to do that. And I did, and I raised over 21 grand for a charity called CALM. Not only that, I decided to be open about my own story. At this point, I wasn't being open about the fact I've been sexually abused, because I was still really embarrassed about it, and I was still felt dirty and disgusted and all the rest of it. But I was open about the fact that I had addiction problems, that I conquered those temporarily. It's never over for me. I'm always on top of it. I always think of it. I'm still an addict, and I'm temporarily in control, but I keep my eye on that ball. Yeah, I just decided to go for it with not a lot of knowledge of that distance, but a lot of knowledge of myself. And I'm quite stubborn. So I did it. Got it done, raised that money, still didn't feel fulfilled, still didn't think I was broken enough. And it's just escalated from that point on, really. I did last year, I wanted to do the Wales Coast Path, which is 870 miles. So I trained hard for that. Reece Jenkins, who's got the FKT, ironically, it was one of his races, my first ultra. So we knew each other a little bit, and then we got chatting through Instagram. Met up with him for coffee and talked about his FKT and his run and blah blah blah. I just decided to do it. Got to 580 miles in and twisted my ankle. Devastated, but it was a 580 mile recce. I'm quite good at trying to think, right, that's happened. What can I learn from it? How can I turn that negative into a positive and move on? So I went back this year. What I decided to do this year, because I raised over 5 grand for a charity called Young Minds last year. The thinking being, maybe we're not going to stop all these men from killing themselves at 40 from my generation now. I mean, I'm 44 now. And since I raised that money, there's another 3 men locally have killed themselves, all of a similar age, 2 of which I play football with. So I started to think more and look further back into it. And I thought, well, maybe if we can get young men now, like my 13 and 15-year-old sons, to be more able to communicate, to show more feelings. So that's what I did. I raised the money for Young Minds. And then this year, I thought, well, people are probably bored of me now doing these challenges. What can I do to get people's attention? So I combined the last 2 years. I thought, I'll do the whole of Wales, 870 miles, finishes at Chepstow. You've got to go home anyway. You may as well run up. So I ran up from Chepstow to the top to Prestatyn. Luckily, this year for me, it went to plan. I avoided injury. I beat the Wales FKT by 1 day, 5 hours and 5 minutes.
Wow.
My 11-year-old daughter was there, so I had a 20-minute break there, cuddle with her, and then ran the 2.5 miles down to the end of the Offa's Dyke, touched a stone, turned around and ran the 177 miles back up to Prestatyn. And then I beat that FKT by, I think, 3 days and something hours. So I managed to get both FKTs. As we speak, I think the money's on about 8 grand for 2 charities. One is the Children's Society, which work with obviously children and young people, but they also work with families. Because you can imagine, in my own experience, yes, it was tough for me, but you imagine what it was like for my brother and my sister, my mum and dad, when all this came out a few years ago. There's a lot of questions asked. There's a lot of trauma for the surrounding people. So it's good that they do that, but that's a nationwide charity, because I know obviously through Instagram and there's been YouTube videos made of my run, so it's more people would donate to that charity nationwide. But I also chose a local charity called Access Counselling that works specifically with children, young people, but also adults that have been historically sexually abused in my area. Yeah, so the money's over 8 grand. I think it's about 3 grand to the local charity and 5.5 to the Children's Society. So that's been great. And it was last year on the Wales Coast Path. I made a bit of a balls up, which anyone that's listening that's done a lot of running will know these marginal errors are what can make or break your run. So day one is like, I think I did 52 miles or something, but it's mainly tarmac and concrete. So obviously my feet were sore. So what I thought is I'll put an extra insole in each trainer for day 2 just to give my feet a bit of a breather. So I put the one insole in I think it was, I can't remember which way around it was. I put it in one foot anyway, then was talking to my old man, had breakfast, forgot to put the other one in, went and did another 46, 48 miles the second day. But that 2 or 3 mil difference, of course, meant a pinch on my IT band on the side of my knee. So then, that was bloody sore then. It was getting sore throughout the day, but I didn't think what the issue would be until I took my trainers off at night. So then day 3 and 4 going around Anglesey, I was in bloody agony. And I think day 4, I was going up Holyhead Mountain, or day 5, I can't remember. And I was having a real bad time. And I don't really like to draw on the past that much. I try and be full of positive energy. And but I did, I started getting angry about my childhood and just drawing on that, and just got full of tears, full of anger, and just went and basically smashed out another, I think I did another 40 odd mile day with loads of elevation. Just ran through the pain, and then I got back and just posted on my Instagram and just did this long post just saying, look, so I want to say a thank you. It's a really weird thank you. Thank you to the guy that abused me. Thank you for what it's made me. And just came out with it. That's it. Once it's out there, isn't it? Yeah. And from that point on, I've had loads of people reach out to me through Instagram, like people that know me in my own area, etc., etc. It's just amazing how common it is, man. You know, and there's people walking around carrying all this shit that just don't want to talk about it. And I think, well, if I can, or heaven forbid it was one of my own children, that something was happening to them and they thought, oh, I can't go to Dyke, so you won't understand. If they can see that what they perceive as this strong, fit, healthy guy, that's, you know, shit happens to anyone. It doesn't matter how fit you are, what you look like, you know, if you're a tough guy, whatever you are, it's just irrelevant. Shit happens to each and every one of us. And if we could normalize that a little bit and bring it out into the open, then it's going to put people at ease more to come forward with their own trauma, their own stress, their own horrible happenings.
Absolutely. Do you think, I know as I'm getting older, I'm a bit younger than you, so I'm 40, nearly 40, I'm 42, nearly 43. as I'm getting older, I'm finding out about friends and relatives where this has happened to them, and it's things that they've kept hidden for years, and it seems to be more and more common that, you know, as we get a bit older, we find out all these stories that, you know, skeletons in family cupboards that, you know, that have not come out, and then eventually something will come out, and when it, you know, things that have happened that, you know, that I found out about friends and family and stuff, and I just think how on earth did that stay hidden for so long? and then eventually come out. Do you think it's the tide is turning a little bit? Do you think the things are changing with the how people view it, and like yourself actually coming forward with things and dealing with it? Do you think things are changing with respect to that kind of thing?
I think they are, but I also think, and this is some personal experience and other people I spoke to, what happened then was like pre-puberty for me, and I didn't really understand. I knew something was not right, obviously. I knew it was weird. But then puberty happens and you have your sort of sexual awakening, I guess you'd call it, whatever, and you have more of an understanding about what's happened to you. And it's emasculating. And then you take that into, and obviously I grew up in the 90s, but teenage boys haven't changed that much. I've got 13 and 15-year-old lads, and have gone through puberty in the last few years, and I just see the change in them. All of a sudden, they want to be tough guys, and they're flexing their muscles, and they're sticking their chest out. It's just the way it is. You can say that times are changing, and the toxic masculinity is trying to be eradicated, but it's not, because in young men full of testosterone, full of wanting to prove themselves in the world, at school, and in their football teams, their rugby teams, that's just the way it is. So then you have all those feelings as you come into it as an abused boy, and you wrap yourself in this armor, and you wrap yourself in this invisible cloak that just, I can't let anyone in. And then that feeling of shame, self-loathing, it grows and it escalates around you. And then all of a sudden you get to the point where it's like, I can't tell anyone now. Because if anything, you try and make yourself out to be the opposite of what you feel inside. I mean, I don't know. There are no answers. There's no all-encompassing answer, is there? But I know for sure that as a young person, growing up as I did in the 90s, I just felt that no one would speak to me and no one would want anything to do with me if they knew what had happened to me. And everyone would just think I was dirty and disgusting. I can't really think that that's changed much. I can't really think that an abused child now is going to be comfortable speaking about it until they get to a stage of life where they're comfortable in their own skin, and that takes flipping work. It takes a lot of internal dialogue. It takes a lot of external help. And it takes a lot of pain and trauma, which is only going to happen with time, isn't it?
But you must feel that though you're having an impact with what you've done. So you coming forward with your story, that's got to have an effect on people, hasn't it?
I think so. I'd like to think so. I mean, all of us are comfy banging our own drum, are we? But I'd like to think that what I'm doing can have a positive impact on a life or several lives, not just with the fundraising. I mean, on what you're just saying there, the fundraising is hugely important. But yes, the opening of conversations, the starting up of those conversations, normalizing it is just as important. Especially for men. And it's sad to say, because we're surrounded by media that makes us believe that it's so different now, that toxic masculinity is dead, and that it's bollocks. It's just not. Unfortunately, it's not. Young men, it's centuries and centuries and centuries, isn't it, of ingrained behavior that men have to be tough and be a provider, and that women have their own defined roles. I mean, I coach other runners now, and I'm a women's head. I spend my life with women, so I'm quite plugged into both sides. But I can see it from both sides as well. Obviously, I've got my boys, and I've got my own past to look back on. I don't know. I think you can only try and share your story, try and share your own experiences, and hope that maybe it encourages one or two others to come forward. But I think we're a long way off people being able to come forward at 15 or 20 and say, this happened to me.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about teenagers not being any different to how we were. So last night we went to a kids party. So my daughters are 11 and 13, They went to a school leaving party for a friend of theirs. It was like a combined kids party for some leaving in primary school and some leaving big school, high school and everything. So there was a real mix of ages of kids there, all playing, all out in the field playing football on this field. And my wife commented on the fact that there was like a bit of a masculinity contest between the lads. So one of the lads, I mean, it wasn't even warm last night, but one of the lads took his shirt off. So he was probably about 13, 14, and he took his shirt off. And then there was a lad there that was about 15, and he took his shirt off because the other one had took his off. And then another one, the oldest one, who was 16, basically trumped them all by taking his top off, and he'd been going to the gym for the past year. So all the mums were laughing, saying that boys will be boys, and they all sort of, and that's true, isn't it? That that it's kind of like it's ingrained in them with testosterone, because that's just how you grow up, but it's also your surroundings as well, that you react to your surroundings, and that's probably half the trouble as well, isn't it? That kids have got those feelings, they've got those hormones coursing through the veins. You feel like a lad, you're starting to feel like you're a bloke when you get to about 15, but you're not, are you? And that's so she was sort of, so it's true, exactly true what you say, that there is no sort of escape from the way that lads will feel. And part of, like you say, part of that is a lad will not want to admit to something bad happening to them, like you had in your childhood. So yeah, do you think that, I'm just trying to think where I'm going with this point now, but do you think that things will ever be at a point where kids can come forward before they get to like our age and start to deal with things? Do you think a society will ever be to the point where kids can freely come forward and say, this only happened to me a couple of years ago, rather than holding on to it for years and then it coming out later on in life?
Top answer is I don't think so.
Yeah.
But obviously that's subjective, and that's going to depend on the individual, isn't it? I think as a whole, maybe as we move forward, there'll be more individuals that are able to come forward, because I think there's more conversations now within families. I think school have better pastoral care. I think children are encouraged now to come forward to talk about things like mental health, sexual awareness. All these different things are encouraged more. But I do think it's just going to be down to the individual. And I think you're always going to have that male thing. It's that male, the dominance thing, the size thing. I mean, just little things. They'll come and boys will come and stand right up in my face and say, nearly as big as your dad, or pencil muscles. It's just ingrained, isn't it? And it's that thing of dominance and wanting to be strong and wanting to be not showing weakness or perceived weakness, vulnerability. And I can only speak for myself, but I think I speak for a lot of people I've spoken to that have been abused. You do feel vulnerable and weak. I mean, that's just the way it is. That's the way you're made to feel. That's why you're controlled, because it's a loss of control. And I think that's another thing. That's a conflicting thing, really, with my life as an addict and my life as an ultra runner, athlete, whatever you want to call it, because I mean, the gym is a big part of my life as well as running. But for years, I felt the control had been taken away from my life. So by getting completely battered on drink and drugs was a loss of control that I chose. But running and my diet and my nutrition and the gym is something I control. And that, again, I know that can go into unhealthy parts, can't it? By the diet thing, especially. Because I mean, for years, I would wake up, have a coffee. I wouldn't eat all day. I'd get home from work. The minute I got home from work, I'd start drinking wine, smoke some weed. Then I'd binge eat all night, go to bed, feeling like a pig. Wake up, hate myself for what I'd done, have a coffee, repeat. But my weight was just going up. And I mean, I was 16.5 stone when I finally got sober at 38. I'm like just 12 stone 10 or something now. I'm only 5'11". I'm not like a skinny runner now, you know. I was big and heavy, and it was uncomfortable to run and uncomfortable to put my socks on and tie my laces. So I would say I've got a healthy-ish relationship with food, but I do try and control it. That was one of the most difficult things with running 1,000 miles in 22 days. The amount of food you got to have, and the fact I'd be eating. I mean, I have lost a bit of weight, obviously, but it's uncomfortable for me to overeat because I have this thing that I'm going to get big again. But you can't run 45, 50 miles a day for 22 days without trying to get between 4,000 and 7,000 calories in, depending on the elevation of the pace on the day. But I managed it. But the control thing that you get from training yourself, from getting yourself to a certain point, or trying to lose weight in a certain part, or build a certain muscle, it just makes me feel that I'm calling the shots in my own life, which for so many years I didn't feel I was. Not only abuse, but like I just said, addiction robs you of that. You choose to get off your face and whatever when you're a young person, but once the addiction comes, I would come home at night and just think, I'm only going to have 2 cans of beer tonight, or I'm only going to have half that bottle of wine. But once I'd had those two, and then it wasn't a choice for me anymore, because I had this like a split personality addiction is, because me, Alan, doesn't like to get smashed, but then that version of me, Alan, has no say in it. Once I've started down that path, I have no option but to continue, because my personality has been taken from me. I have no control over who I've become. So I guess getting sober and getting into running as I do now is the happiest I've ever been, the most fulfilled I've ever been, because I'm calling the shots. Mentally, I'm switched on to where I want to be. I'm very focused. I still don't think I'm anywhere near. I can continue to improve. I can continue to learn, develop. And I sometimes get a bit sad and bitter about my past and looking at this wasted life. But then I think I wouldn't be who I am without it all. So I'm kind of at peace with it. Most of the time, I would say 80% of it, 80% of my life, I'm at peace with the past. And that includes my childhood, all my addiction problems, the time spent in young offenders, the numerous arrests and nights in cells, because we are what we are, and we aren't who we are without living the life we've lived, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You've got to go through it to become who you are.
Do you
go on.
No, you say, carry on.
I was just going to say, I think the mentality I have as a runner and an athlete is partly formed from my past. I've always been, like I say, been a strong runner as a kid and whatever. So I've got some natural ability, but to do what you do in ultra running and to do what I do, is so much of it is mentality. There's plenty of people fitter and faster than me that wouldn't do what I've just done, because it's a mental thing. It's really, and you'll know this yourself. People you talk to within the sport, I'm far from the only one that's got a history in abuse, drugs, alcohol. If you've got a little demon in there somewhere, or several demons, or whatever it is, you can harness that. It becomes powerful, and you can use that to your advantage. So the demons that sort of tainted my life and made it difficult for many years, now they're helping to drive me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so I spoke to Jack Scott, who if you know who he is, he came second in the Winter Spine this last year. So I interviewed him before that, and we went into his past as a gambling addict, and he was saying that a lot of people had said the same thing to him as people have obviously said to you, that do you feel like you've swapped one addiction for another? But he didn't feel that. He felt that he'd got this addiction to gambling, and he, like you, decided he was going to stop, and that was it. He put things in place to make sure he could stop. And the running crossed over at that point as he was getting into running, that's when he was deciding he was needed to sort his life out, and the two things crossed over. But he didn't feel that he'd replace gambling with ultra running. But do you think that there is a major correlation between, or do you think it's just a personality thing, that I know I view myself, sometimes I can be a bit all or nothing. So I will if I get into something, I will throw myself into it 100% and do it. Same, obviously with you, same with ultra running for me. Once I decided I was an ultra runner, that was it. I was all in and went for it. Would you think people have got a certain personality trait that lends them towards being an addict of, drugs, alcohol, gambling, and then that just crosses over straight away to be able to be an addict of ultra running?
I think certainly, and again, I know it divides opinions, so I'm trying to be diplomatic. I think certainly there's an element of that. But I also think there's a massive link between childhood trauma and abuse and addiction. So I've asked myself many times, would I have been an addict if my childhood hadn't happened? We'll never know, will we? And the same thing, you could say, if I hadn't had addiction problems, would I be as strong-minded a runner? We'll never know. But I do think there's got to be. I think there's just got to be a link between that dog with a bone, not being able to leave it alone, all or nothing, whatever you want to call it, as you just said about your own self. Because I can be like it with other things in life as well. But I'm also very single-minded. So if I decide I'm doing something, I want to do it. But the opposite is true as well. If I decide something or someone or something, that's it. I've had enough of that. That's just it. I'm very good at just saying, right, done, move on. Like now, I know I'm here talking to you about what I've just done with the coast path, but that's done for me now. That's it. And I had 2 days rest and I was back in the gym last night. I was back in the gym this morning. I've got a 100-mile race in Snowdonia in 5 weeks. My focus is on that. I've got the Arc of Attrition then in January. My focus is on that. I want to spend I've got 300 milers in the next 10 months. So my focus now is on becoming a more proficient 100-mile runner. We're all on completely different terrains, and I want to refine myself on that and see what I can do at that distance rather than the multi-day stuff. I just move on.
Well, so what I was going to be, that was going to be my sort of line of questioning. That now you've done that, do you is that it with that kind of challenge? Because I mean, you've ticked off two FKTs like in one go, and you've rewritten those by days. Do you feel like an urge to go and look for other FKTs that you can go and take days off, or do you feel like you say with these races coming up, do you feel that you've closed the door on that part of your life, now it's going to be more focused on other things, or do you not feel, do you sort of work year to year with what you're going to focus on?
To be honest, if it wasn't for my girlfriend, I probably wouldn't even claim those FKTs. I don't even know how to do that. I mean, coming on here now, I just had to get my girlfriend to set me up. I didn't have an email. I've never sent an email till I was in my 40s. It's only when I separated from my marriage that I got an email address. I only got Instagram because my friend Laura told me I needed it for fundraising when I started doing this.
Yeah.
So I don't even know how to claim an FKT. It's like, yeah, I've got it, but it's irrelevant to me really, because it's a record. Someone's going to go beat it next year or the year after or 5 years. It's just, it was good. It got some attention for the charity, and I know I've done it, so that's enough for me. I couldn't really give a shit about if my name's on some website somewhere that I wouldn't even know how to look at anyway. It's done. I've just moved on. The truth is, I think I'm really well suited to multi-day stuff. One, because getting up in the morning becomes tougher and tougher, and I don't think everyone's cut out for that. I'm quite good at just making myself do things because I've decided to do it, so that's it. But I also have a lot of parental guilt about the early years of my children's life, and my daughter's really struggled with me being away this time, so I promised her that I won't do anything for quite a long time. She's 11, she goes to high school this time, she needs a dad around. So that's it as far as I'm concerned. Above everything else in my life is my children. So the answer to your question is, yeah, I would like to do some more multi-day stuff because I think it suits me, but until my daughter's a bit older, I mean, the boys probably loved it. It's like, Dad's gone, we can play up for Mum and go and see Nan, and because I'm the strict one. But no,
it's tough balance, isn't it? Being a dad, but also being an ultra runner. That because I know I'm the same. If I'm away for a race, and if it's multiple days away, you do feel it. But then I suppose your kids understand that if they know your personality, they know that you've got to go and do something. I know my wife, she's kind of over the years sort of, she really resisted me running any further than like 100k, because she thought that running 100 miles was ridiculous. So for years and years she was very anti doing anything further than 60, 70 miles.
For your health?
For my health, yeah. So she, it was a genuine concern of hers, and that, being a good husband, I humoured it for years. But probably part of it was that it was easy for me to focus on shorter stuff and be happy to do that anyway. But over the years, she's come to terms with the fact that I know that I haven't fulfilled my potential as an ultra runner by going further. So she's now actually the one that encourages me to test myself and go a bit further. So I think we can feel guilty, can't we, as parents and as husbands, as dads and everything. But do you think your kids will be proud of you, won't they?
Oh, certainly. I mean, yeah, they're super proud. And like I say, my daughter came out a few times. My mum and dad brought her out a few times. My son was messaging me all the time. The oldest one, the middle one, not so much. He was at the skate park, probably in his best life. But yeah, the older one, who's into fitness and the gym and that with me, he was loving it. But I mean, he's got his GCSEs next year, the older one. So I'm definitely not doing anything next year. And I promised Katie, my girlfriend, I wouldn't do anything major next year. Stupidly, I said that, and I've got to stick to it. A moment of weakness.
You're a man of your word.
Yeah, I am a man of my word. Just got to be careful when I give my word. But no, I mean, the multi-day stuff it's interesting. But then saying that, I mean, there's the Dragon's Back, isn't there? That wouldn't appeal to me. I'm shit at navigation. And I know that's something I could improve on. That was an interesting thing, actually, how much time navigation puts on your day. I mean, again, I'm not into tech that much, so I had the OS Maps app on my phone.
Yeah.
The coast path in Offa's Dyke is quite well signposted, but any instances I wasn't sure, I'd be getting the app out and checking and looking for signs. Obviously, it's an FKT, so I didn't want to deviate from the true path. On the day I was close to home, running up here, which was probably say 30 or 40 miles that I know like the back of my hand. Kelp and Fern, who were making a documentary about it for YouTube, they got hardly any footage because they couldn't catch me. Loads of people locally were coming out to see me. They're looking at the tracker and thinking, oh, the speedy's been moving, he'll be there in an hour. 45 minutes later, I've gone through there. Honestly, once you take out the need to navigate and get your phone out, it was like almost half. I was going from about, I think, averaging about 4.5 miles an hour to averaging about 5 miles an hour. It's unbelievable, isn't it? Just that, what it's putting on your day, and of course over 12, 14-hour days, that's a lot.
Yeah. And mentally as well. Mentally, it takes it out of you looking at maps and
I had some crap weather as well for July. I mean, a lot of the time you're just getting your phone out and it's pouring down, and then your screen won't work, and then I've got a bag for it, but you're trying to huddle over and keep your phone dry. It just all adds up. It's all time.
Yeah.
What I would like to do in a few years is I would like to go back and do the coast path on its own. Because I mean, I did that in, well, I don't know what it was, 19 days and something. I think I could do that in 17 days, some hours. Because obviously I was holding myself back, because I know I had 177 miles and 29,000 feet to go. It was tough that last few days. A lot of elevation. Whereas the coast path was, well, they say it's 870. I think I did 878 miles and about 90,000 feet.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a tough few days, but having done 580 miles of it twice, and then the last however many miles, 290, that nav would be a little bit easier, wouldn't it? But I mean, that'd be a few years. I'd probably have forgot it anyway in a few years. It's like the miles we run and whatever, it would just be so many other trails done.
So does do any of the really long distance races appeal to you now? They're like 200 plus milers. So there's a few of them knocking around now, isn't there?
Yeah, Rhys Jenkins does one in South Wales.
Yeah.
which covers quite a lot of the coast path actually, and various trails down there. Possibly. I think, and I was talking to someone about this last week, I think it depends how you view a 200-mile race. Do you look at it as a multi-day event? Because, I mean, the sleep stations are provided, and I was sleeping in the back, me and Katie just slept in the back of a van, Volkswagen Caddy van, so it's not like I was having luxurious sleep every night. So I was getting 2, 3, 4 hours, I was lucky, proper sleep. So would I approach it as 360 or 70-mile days and then try and go for it on the last day, or 450-mile days and try and sleep? Or do you just try and do 200 miles and get 15, 20 minutes sleep here and there? I don't think that'd suit me, to be honest. But you don't know. I think 100 mile is the ultimate distance.
Golden distance.
Because you don't sleep. You've got to go for it. You're running nearly all of it, aren't you? You walk some of the hills, but you know, you're pretty much running 100 miles. There's not many people running all the 200 miles. You know, you're doing quite a bit more walking. Your running pace is going to be slower anyway. Your sleep deprivation on a 100 miler, depending on your pace, obviously. I mean, I did the Arc in January, but I had COVID at Christmas and hardly trained. So I did the Arc in, I think, 33:49. But I walked that from about 78 miles to 104 when it finishes. I just walked it in and was on my inhaler constantly. So I'm going back in January. I'd like to go sub 30 there. I've got the Snowdon 100 in September, but I'm doing that with Katie, my girlfriend. It's her first 100. So we'll do that together. It'll take as long as it takes. That's just going to be, doesn't matter how fast you do it, 100 miles is tough, isn't it? Especially in the mountains. So we'll just do that as a couple and enjoy it. And then I've got the Chester 100 next May, which is like 5,000 feet and a lot of canal running. Yeah. I'm quite curious to try and do that sort of 22, 24 hours if I can, because you're running constantly. So they're all just different things, aren't they? See how I feel after that. Because I put on events myself now, running monk trail events.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. So
that's something, as I got into ultra running, I started to see there was a lot of cut-offs. There's a lot of cut-offs in a lot of events, and then it put a lot of people off. I've also started coaching runners a few years ago. I mean, I was very lucky to be coached by Tim in my early 30s. I learned so much from him, and then I've been reading, again, that personality. I've learned and obsessed and developed myself so much. And then through my hairdressing, I've got a lot of women that, you know, I put a colour on, and I work in people's homes because it's easier. And then I'm writing out training plans for people and giving them diet plans and not charging anyone and just doing it because I just like to see people develop and help people. And then I thought, and I was getting asked more and more. And so I started coaching people. And then people have put off entering events because of that elite mentality that they perceive as at events. And it isn't at all events at all. And then I just thought, you know what, maybe I'll start putting events on. And then last year, obviously being away from home for what we thought was going to be 3 or 4 weeks doing the coast path and being self-employed, I thought, well, if I just did one event and made 300 or 400 quid, it would help towards the household bills while I was gone. Anyway, we did it and it was great. And then we did a 10K and it was successful. And as happens with all new businesses, we didn't make any money because we'll do another one. So you put money into that. And it's just grown. This year we've done 50K, 10K, half marathon. We've got a 50K, a 50 mile coming up in September, another marathon. And, you know, we haven't made any money, but we've made a bit of money, but we've invested it straight back in. So we've bought our own arch, we've bought everything we need, we've got our own printed gazebo. We're just getting stuff to make us look more professional, but we have no cut-offs. If you sign up, you're there, you know, and that shows in our 50K. I think our winner was, 4:36 or 4:38, and the last runner in was just under 12 hours. You know, the one that messaged on the Sunday, the one that was last, to say she was still smiling and what a great day she'd had. And that just made my heart soar. Just felt brilliant about that. You can be part of making someone feel good about themselves and do something that they don't always have the opportunity to do. To feel how you and I would feel at the end of an event, why should that be limited to people that can only move at a certain pace?
Yeah.
Massive gamble. We're doing our first 100 mile event next July with no cut-offs. which I'm not even sure if there is anyone else that's doing that in the country.
Yeah,
What I've said, obviously, is that depending on the pace you move at, you may get to an aid station that will be unmanned. But in terms of finishing a 100 miler, I will be there at the end to meet everyone. If that's 30, 40, 50 hours, whatever it may be, if people are going to pay the money and commit to training for a 100 miler, I've got to put my faith in people. It's not just going to be someone off the street, see it and pay the money and come and do it without training. You've got to put your faith in people that they'll do what needs to be done. I could turn up tomorrow to a 100 miler and DNF because I got my nutrition wrong or because I tripped over. Shit happens to everyone. Doesn't matter whether you're a good runner, bad runner. But I think to give people the opportunity to get that buzz that you and I know is just, it's unbelievable, isn't it? Time will tell.
Yeah. So how have you found setting that up then, since, because a lot of race directors struggled through the pandemic and everything? What's your view on the as a business sort of thing side of things? Are you not focused on turning it into a viable business that makes money, or are you just putting on races because you love putting on races? What's your sort of mentality with it?
I'm putting on races because I love putting on races. I mean, we try to be cheaper than nearly all other companies if we can. Eventually, we'd like to try and make some money out of it. It's Katie and I both in it together. We've both got jobs, obviously. I mean, I'm a hairdresser and a running coach. That's my income. That's what pays my bills. We would like eventually to be able to take some money out of it, even if it was eventually to take a few £100 each a year out to pay for a running adventure or something like that, or to take the kids somewhere. But at the minute, it's just about trying to get people into running, trying to show people that running is not just for super skinny whippets and super quick people, that all different kinds of people can come together, try and build a community. I mean, it's never going to be a full-time job, because it just isn't, unless you're charging a fortune and getting 400 or 500 runners. It's just not going to work like that. And I like to speak to each individual entrant at the start in the morning. I mean, it's pretty chaotic, you can imagine, but yeah. I think the biggest field we've had is like 150 or something for the 10Ks, which is always going to be a popular distance. Yeah. I think the marathon, the half marathon, we get sort of 80, 90 runners, but that's still, I can speak to everyone individually. Yeah. The 50Ks have been between 30 and 40. They're not massive fields at all. What I'd love to get is somewhere between 80 and 100 runners for the 50K, the 50 mile and the marathon. Then yes, there would be a bit of money made out of it, because it's a lot of time. For example, I've got the Snowdon 100 on the 1st of September. So let's say, for argument's sake, I'm running for 40 hours, no sleep. I've then got a 50 miler and a marathon on the following Saturday, the 9th. I mark the routes myself, and my other promise is you never go more than a mile without seeing a sign. And I'm a bit of a control freak, so I do all the route marking myself, so that if people don't want to use tech, if they're a bit like me, they don't know how to use it, you can navigate my routes just by following the signs. But that's a lot of work. And I use little pink, I've got some recycled plastic, I've got a company that make them for me, little pink signs like that. Well, you can only fit sort of 30 in your backpack. So it's a lot of out and backs with the car park somewhere. So I'm going to be quite tired, quite a lot of miles in my legs, and I've got that to do. And I also I do some mentoring with young people, which is non-negotiable. I have to do that on that Wednesday. The other days I can be free. So I've got Monday to recover, Tuesday to do a bit of route marking, Thursday, Friday to do the route marking. It's quite full on, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if you look at that, I need a daily wage for those days I'm spending. It'll be about 15 quid. That's just the way it is. I've never been a money man. I've never been chasing money. The most money I ever made was when I was snorting cocaine and drinking booze, and I was working 6-7 days a week and miserable, just paying for a habit. I earn less money now than I've ever earned. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I'm the fittest I've ever been, and I'm making the most difference to other people's lives, which is priceless. You can't put a price on that, can you?
No, absolutely, yeah. I saw a social media post the other day and I thought it was quite interesting that someone was saying how everybody's obsessed with buying things that can be spending time and buying things that can be replaced. So like they're obsessing over buying houses and buying cars. All these things come and go and can be replaced, but they're not concentrating on the things that can't be replaced, like your health and fitness and family, spending time with family, all those things that you can't get, you don't get a second shot at. Why are people so obsessed with, spending money and time getting things that are just going to disappear? They should be focusing on the things that are really important in life, which is, your health and your family, things like that. Just thought it
I
was
agree. I don't own a home. I've no savings account. I've got no money saved. I go to work. I try and do my best. I try and help my kids when they need stuff. But I try and lead by example. I try and live in a way that makes them see that, well, Dad's quite together, because they've seen me not be together. They've seen me be a mess. But I'm never going to be able to give them some big inheritance. I'm never going to be able to give them a flash house or buy them cars when they're 17. But I try and make up for that by living in a way that they can look at and think, he's doing all right. That's my mentality. But money is just, I'm yet to see anyone that's happy due to just money. Obviously, there's some rich, happy people. I'm not saying that. There's loads of rich, happy people, but their happiness isn't due to the fact they're rich, is it?
No. Yeah,
I'm the no. And I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with you. Yeah, it's happiness. Yeah, it's how you make your life, isn't it? It's how people surround yourself with, your loved ones, your family. They're the things that bring you joy in life, not spending money on a new car or a new house, something like that. Yeah,
I hate all that. I hate it. And another thing I did an Instagram post the other day about one of those, those sayings that go around about finding joy in the process, not the outcome. I finished the FKT for Wales. My mum and my daughter have got some toilet roll out as a finish line. One, I didn't go through the finish line because to me I hadn't finished. It was only the first one. I just stopped and had a cuddle with my daughter. I didn't feel anything really. I didn't feel like loads of pride and joy and happiness. It was like, right, have a bit of food, have a cuddle with Ava, and then crack on and get. To me, it was about the full loop. But even finishing the full loop, I didn't feel super chuffed or anything. It's like, yo, I've done that now. That's that done next. But sitting here now talking to you, or when I've been sat on my own looking back and reflecting, the joy was the days when I finished, say, the 53, 54 mile and feeling like I could go on, the days where you felt powerful, or the days when I had that horrible wind and rain and I think I did 50k was the smallest day. 50k, and I think I ran a mile of it. The rest was just poles, hiking, just head down, leaning into the wind.
That's tough.
And that's where the joy is, thinking, I actually pushed through that. Someone said to me, how many times were you close to quitting in the thousand? It was 1,059 miles, 22 days, some hours. And there was 5 or 6 times where I nearly quit. And 4 of them were on the same 2 days. The day I did 50k in those horrible winds, and there was twice in that day where I just thought, one, I could have just laid down the bracken and gone to sleep because I was super tired and cold and my hands were just miserable. And the other was later in the day and I just thought, I needed to be quicker today. I needed to have done 40 miles that day to do what I wanted to do. And I was just close to quitting. And then on the Friday before I finished the Wales one on Saturday dinner time. And on the Friday, going around the Gower, which was supposed to be the most beautiful day, was those really high winds and driving rain again. And it's the first time I've worn waterproof. Well, the second time in my life I've worn waterproof trousers, but the first time I've worn them in an event in July in Wales. I didn't wear them in the Ark in the middle of the night in January. And I just thought, you know what, I might just crack on here. Get to Newport, I've got 28 miles to finish. I might just go through the night, finish the FKT for Wales and just quit. I was so miserable, but I didn't. And little things like that, that is enjoying the process, isn't it? Enjoying those little moments of either feeling good and enjoying that buzz, or feeling shit and not quitting. The actual feeling of, oh, I've achieved something. I think that's something you enjoy further down the line. It's like the finish lines. They're always a weird one for me. I never quite know what to do with myself. Finish lines of events. I'm never one of them to be, don't know. Nothing's ever replaced that rush of being a striker playing football, ball in the net. That to me was that's like, I just love that feeling.
Mm.
Running isn't like that to me. Running feels to me like home. It feels like I'm doing what I was born to do. The actual process of putting one foot in front of another, being alone with my own thoughts. I love it.
Yeah.
And
It's like therapy in itself, isn't it?
it is. And that's the running monk. People say, why the running monk? Again, I had no idea what Instagram was or anything like that. I think I was 41 when I got it. And my friend came around to help me set it up because I didn't have an email, blah, blah, blah. And she said, oh, well, you've got to have a name. And I said, well, Alan Bateson. And so we put it in. Of course, it's already gone.
Yeah.
And then I just said, I don't know. She said, well, something to do with running. And then we just got talking. And, you know, obviously with the life I've lived with the drink and the drugs and everything else, it's a bit of a joke that I'm like a monk now because I don't go out. If I do go out, it might be to take the kids to McDonald's or something, and then I'm, gone home. Can we have a drive through kids instead and just eat it in the car on the way home? I just like being at home, work or running. And running is, as you just said, it's a spiritual experience. It's clarity for me with my thinking. It's everything. So the running monk, because that's what I feel like when I'm out there. It's my form of meditation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Here I am, running monk. And then of course with the trail events as well, it's people sort of had some knowledge of who I was from Instagram, and we've got a Facebook page, which I know how to share a post from Instagram to Facebook, but Katie does it mainly, just put stuff about the fundraising and whatever, but it's running monk, so it just made sense to continue that running monk trail events. Yeah.
Amazing. So if people want to sort of get in touch with you, follow your fundraising and everything, what's the best thing for them to do? Is it follow you on social media as the running monk? Then is that the best place?
Running monk Shropshire, that's my home county, so I'm the running monk Shropshire. There is a Facebook which people follow.
Is that yours or is that for the races and everything?
No, the races is separate. There's Running Monk Trail Events is the event page for Instagram and for Facebook. So my personal one is the Running Monk Shropshire. The events one is Running Monk Trail Events, which I need to get on my phone really. I had it on my old phone, but I got an upgrade for the Coast Path because I wanted good battery life. I need to get Katie to do that.
Get your tech person doing it.
Yeah, she's great. She's brilliant. I wouldn't have done the Coast Path without her. You know yourself, if you're doing ultras, you need decent crew. And you can do, my first 50 miler, I drove up to Lake District, did it, drove home, which was a mistake because it was hard work getting out of the car. But generally, you can do 50k or 50 miles on your own. You don't need any help. But 100 miles and up, even 100k, sometimes it's happy to have a crew. But when you're doing ultras every day for 22 days, who you have around you, it's vital, it's paramount. And she was there every day, listening to my whinging, massaging my feet at night in the back of the van, sorting my food out, making me eat when I didn't want to, topping my water bottles up. Diamond. Absolute diamond.
Amazing. Yeah, you need it's ultra running is like a family event, isn't it? Even if it's just you doing the running, but they're the ones that are sacrificing time while you're out training. They're sacrificing time to come and support you at races.
Yeah.
I always joke that my wife is always quite keen to come to races and bring the kids, but she's never seen me. I've won a few like local races and she's never seen me win a race. She's always I remember the last one that I won, I was like out in the lead. And I kind of knew from figuring out where everyone was, I kind of, if failing something going seriously wrong, that I knew that I kind of had the race in the bag. And she phoned me while I was running, and I thought she was going to say, I'm at the finish line. I'm here waiting for you to come through. I can see on the tracker that you're first. And she was like, so what do you fancy for dinner tonight then? I was like, where are you? And she's like, oh, I'm at home. I'm just about to leave. I'm literally like probably 4 miles from the finish. and you're an hour's drive away. Why haven't you left yet? She's like, why? Where are you? I was like, nearly finished. I think I'm going to win it. And she's like, oh, okay, I best leave now.
Did she get there in time?
No, not at all. No. So she does support me, but she's not interested enough to because I think she knows that from previous experiences when I first started doing ultras that she would go to races and she would be waiting around for a long time for me to finish. So I would always like overestimate or underestimate how long a race would take. And I think she probably just got annoyed that she was always at the finish line waiting and being cold.
And that's understandable, isn't it? I mean, I met Katie through running. We run together. Like I say, she's doing her first 100 miler in a few weeks. She crewed me at the Arc as well in January. I very rarely use aid stations at events. Like most of us, I'm very careful, but with my stomach because it's the biggest thing at DNS people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know what works for me in terms of nutrition. So she's there with the van. She loves it. Thank God. Because I'm not stopping.
behind every good ultra runner is a good crew member, a good wife or
better crew.
We need it, don't we? So just going back to your fundraising and stuff, what's the if people want to get involved with your fundraising, is it best to just go through your Instagram page, or is there something is there a charity for the link or anything?
There's a Just Giving link, but obviously I don't know how to give it on here, but it's in my bio on my Instagram.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it there for another few weeks.
So if I take that, if I copy that link, I'll put that into the show notes for this episode. So when people look at it on YouTube or go onto it on the audio version, it can be there in the notes.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll do that. So listen, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you coming on, and I knew a bit of your story, but it was so good to sort of hear your backstory and how you've gone from struggling with personal demons and addiction and everything, and how you've turned your life around. It's I think you're a great example to people out there that might be in a similar position, struggling with things. So I wish you all the best for the future, and really appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Thanks, man. Might see you at an event one day.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I'll be looking at your event page and having a look, see, because I'm in just outside of Derby, so
I can tell from the accent. I was trying to work it out, but I knew it was that way on somewhere.
Yeah, not a million miles away. So I'll be in touch, 100%. Cheers, Alan. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye bye.